yo, we are back in my CD collection. And today we're going to talk about the band Simple Minds and the CDs that I own by Simple Minds. That makes sense, right? I got into Simple Minds, they broke in the United States, everybody knows, with the song from the Breakfast Club, Don't You Forget About Me, which I like that song, but it didn't make me go, who's this band? I got to find out everything about them. I thought it was a good song, and that was about that. The following year, when they put out their record, Once Upon a Time, I bought that record. I really liked the first single, Alive and Kicking, and that made me pick up the album. And I really liked the album. I bought it on vinyl, sold it years later. I sold it when I got rid of my record player. I wish I had kept it, but I've since bought it again because I really like that album. It's one of my favorites. We'll get to that. But that made me a fan, and then I kind of, paid attention to their next couple of releases, and then kind of lost interest, lost track of the band, and, they've released a ton of music after that, but, I haven't really delved too deep into that. Got to see them live one time, maybe like 10 years ago. I saw them at Roseland in New York, and really, really good show. I wish I had seen them back in like the 80s after Once Upon a Time, or on that tour or something. I think that would have been pretty cool to see. But they're still a phenomenal live band, high energy, just really, great show, but so here's what I got in the CD collection. First up, we have Life in a Day. And really like this record a lot. They kind of have that kind of, I guess early on, this stuff you kind of classify kind of as like new wave sound to them, This is a really good record. Life in a Day, the title track's really good. Chelsea Girl, I really like. Wasteland is really good. But yeah, I remember really, really loving this record when I picked it up. Picked it up years after the fact. Probably in like a lot of these, I think like in the early 2000s or something, I started kind of filling in some of the blanks in my Simple Minds catalog with like the earlier stuff, not so much the later stuff, but the earlier stuff. That's when I picked this up and really, really liked it. Then we have Reel to Reel Cacophony, and this record I'm not that familiar with. I haven't listened to it that much. I think it's kind of probably got a little more of like a experimental sort of sound to it, perhaps. But yeah, this is a record I really need to kind of dive into, or because when I got it, I probably listened to it once or twice, and maybe I just wasn't that crazy about it, and really need to kind of give it another listen. I could say the same for Sons and Fascination. Now this version also includes, they put out like 2 records right around. I don't know if they were back-to-back releases or if they were separate from a few months or something like that, but one was Sons and Fascination, the other was Sister Feelings Call, and this CD combines the 2 of them onto one CD, except there's like one song from Sister Feelings Call that's missing from this, and I don't know if on CD if you can get the 2 of them separately, but yeah, I got this. And again, this, a little more like new wave, experimental kind of sound, I guess. But another one that I haven't, really, spent a lot of time with, and need to spend more time, give it a few more listens, because I haven't since I picked it up. Then we have New Gold Dream. This is starting to sound a lot more like the Simple Minds that we're going to get exposed to when Don't You Forget About Me comes out, even though they didn't write that song. But this sounds a little bit more like that band that that I really kind of liked. And these next 2 records, I kind of became familiar with these because of the live record that comes out a little bit later. That's how I was familiar with some of these songs. It's kind of hard to read. You can barely Someone, Somewhere in Summertime, which I really, really liked. Promised You a Miracle is on here as well. Those were the two big ones that I really remember picking this record up for. And then we get Sparkle in the Rain. Again, sounds a lot like a continuation of New Old Dream. Up on the Catwalk, really good. Waterfront, I really like. Speed Your Love to Me. Yeah, just a really good record. Again, you know, this is all kind of leading up to the one that I enjoy the most, one of my favorite records of all time, and that is Once Upon a Time. Short record, it's only got 8 songs on it. I love all 8 of them. I love all 8 songs that are on here. I think it's a great record. You know, this, you know, some of that early stuff sounds a little more experimental, new wave, what have you. But this makes them sound a bit more like in line with kind of like U2, or, you know, it's like an arena alternative rock album, you know what I mean? College rock, whatever. But, you know, it's a really awesome album, does extremely well, you know, makes them very, very popular here in the United States. Certainly they're piggybacking off of the success of Don't You Forget About Me, but, you know, they release Alive and Kicking as a single. It goes right up to the top 10. And Sanctify Yourself, top 40. All the Things She Said, top 40. They probably could have released, you know, another 1 or 2 of these songs as singles and had success with them. But yeah, just a great, great record. So this comes out in what, 85, this end of 85, I think, and it goes into 86. And then they've got all this momentum, and what do they do with it? They release a live record, a double live record, which I bought on vinyl back in the day. And again, I sold that years later. And when I got a turntable, you know, a handful of years ago, I wish I had kept some of those records, including this one. But it's a good live record, but it was really bizarre to follow up the momentum of Once Upon a Time with a live record, because this just, United States fans, whatever. And again, you know, it's not like they should just be doing whatever their United States fans are going to want, but like they've just got this whole new fan base that they've created. And I don't know, maybe the thought process is like, they don't know some of our old stuff. Let's put out a live record to introduce them to some of the older stuff, which again, you know, that worked for me. You know, this album introduced me to, I wasn't familiar with their stuff before Once Upon a Time. This introduced me to Promise You a Miracle, Waterfront, Somewhere in Summertime. You know, that's how I became familiar with those songs and really liked them from this live record. But just in general, I just think it was kind of not a wise decision to release this as the follow-up to, you know, essentially the biggest album of your career. But that's what they did. And it takes a long time to put out their next studio record. I bought it the day it came out. I couldn't wait for it. Really hadn't heard anything before the album. I bought it, you know, just went out and grabbed it because it was their new studio record. And that's Street Fighting Years. Some of the band had changed at this point. And I remember, like, over in Europe, they had released Belfast Child from this as a single, and I think it did fairly well overseas, but it wasn't released here in the United States. I think the first single from this, when they released it in the States, was This Is Your Land, which was a really kind of slow, brooding song, and it didn't click at all. I mean, they essentially, not to sound like dramatic or whatever, but essentially that whole fan base that they had garnered in the United States from Once Upon a Time, when this came out and This Is Your Land came out as a single, disappeared. Essentially disappeared. Which, you know, and the record, it's okay. It's not a bad record. I kind of liked it when it came out. But, you know, it's a lot of the songs, a lot of them are really, really long. They're kind of like mellower and stuff. Some of the tracks, Take a Step Back was pretty good. Kick It In was pretty good. Those, Kick It In, I felt like they could have maybe edited down like a single version of that, because the song's 6 minutes long. They probably could have edited down like maybe a 3-minute version of that and released it as a single, and it might have done okay. But yeah, I mean, the record just really kind of belly flopped here in the United States. Mandela Day was pretty good. They do a cover of Biko, Peter Gabriel song. But it's not a bad song. The title track I kind of like as well. But yeah, just really, just kind of, kind of essentially ended their career here in the United States in a way, you know what I mean? But, maybe, who cares? Maybe it doesn't matter to them. They followed that up with Real Life. And the funny thing about Real Life is this almost feels like this would have been a better follow-up to Once Upon a Time. I think they might have had a little bit better success with this as a follow-up to Once Upon a Time. There's songs like See the Lights, which they released as a single that did okay, like on alternative rock, college rock. Let There Be Love, same thing. Ghost Rider's really good. I like that song a lot. But yeah, not a bad record. This is my ticket stub from that Roseland show in 2013. But yeah, not a bad record. And then we get Good News from the Next World. And my copy is a promo copy that's kind of beat up. I tried peeling the sticker off the booklet and it got all ruined. So I'm kind of on the hunt. If I find a copy of this out in a record store or something somewhere really cheap, I'd probably buy a new one just to replace it because it's just all beat up and stuff and whatever. I'm weird like that. This one was okay. She's a River was released as a single and did pretty good. I think Hypnotized was not a bad song. Trying to remember what else I remember from this. I haven't listened to these in a while. I probably need to like have a Simple Minds weekend and put all these in and go through the catalog. And then the last record I have by them is, I just picked this up pretty recently, maybe a year or 2 years ago. This is Neopolis, and I picked this one up because I'd listened to a podcast where Mitch Gaynor, who was a drummer for Simple Minds for a period of time, he was the guest on the podcast, and he was talking about his career and everything like that, and certainly his time in Simple Minds. And they were talking about how he played drums. He had come back to the fold and played drums on this record, because essentially at some point Simple Minds goes from the band to being pretty much just Jim Kerr and Charlie, I think is the guitar player, I think is Buckner or something like that. It pretty much just became the two of them with multiple, Charlie Burchill is the guitar player. Like the two of them essentially became Simple Minds with various other people backing them up here and there. I think, like I said, Mitch Gaynor kind of comes back in the fold. And I thought he played on this album completely, but apparently he only played on one or two songs. But that's why I kind of that's why I picked this one up, because I was kind of, intrigued by the idea of him coming back to play drums. And then when I found out, oh no, he just plays on like one or two songs, I was a little disappointed. And it's okay. There's a couple of songs on here that are all right, but nothing special. And like I said, they've released a ton of other music besides this. They've got a lot of records, and still out there playing shows live, still out recording new music. I think maybe put out a new record within the last couple of years. I think they're still really, really popular in Europe, but here in the States, I think most people have kind of forgotten about. Don't You Forget About Me is played still on the radio all over the place, or commercials, whatever. But just as a band, I think if you were to go up to anybody, who was around in like the 80s and stuff, and told them about Simple Minds, they would be like probably surprised to hear that they're still around making new music. But like I said, I saw them at Roseland 10 years ago. The show was packed, and sold the place out, and put on a good show. But I think just as far as new music goes, I don't think anybody in the States is really that interested in anything they're doing. But whatever, what are you going to do? Who cares, right? Doesn't matter. But that's my collection of Simple Minds. Let me know what you think of the band, what albums you have, what songs you really like, if you ever saw them live, especially those early days. I'd be kind of interested to hear about that. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you another time. We will. Don't worry. We'll be back.